Good evening. 3 days after Election Day in the U.S., counting of ballots continue. While Joe Biden seemed to be closing in on the U.S. presidency, the outcome hinges on some battleground states. Joe Biden has taken a slight edge in Georgia and Pennsylvania today and is leading in Nevada and Arizona too, even as Donald Trump maintains his lead in North Carolina. The Trump team is pressing legal challenges in several states, signaling that he is in no mood to concede this election. In focus tonight is Biden closes in on U.S. presidency. That and more in this edition of News Night. I'm Munal Bhattacharya. First up, the headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi holds a virtual bilateral summit with the Italian counterpart Giuseppe Conte. 15 agreements are signed in various sectors, including economy and energy. PM Modi underlines the need to prepare for the challenges and opportunities arising out of the pandemic. Union Home Minister Amit Shah hits out at West Bengal government, accuses the Mamata Banerjee government of a politics of appeasement, sets for BJP workers a target of 2/3 majority in next year's assembly polls. Bihar prepared to vote tomorrow in the third and final phase of assembly elections. Over 2 crore 35 lakh voters will decide the fate of over 1,200 candidates for 78 seats. Results scheduled on Tuesday. Fight against air pollution gets more thrust as centre constitutes the Commission for Air Quality Management in Delhi NCR and adjoining areas. Karnataka and Delhi ban crackers in view of COVID-19 and pollution levels. Chief of Defence Staff General Bipin Rawat says China's PLA facing unanticipated consequences of its misadventure because of strong and firm response from Indian Defence Forces, asserts India will not accept any shifting of the LAC. Army Chief General M.M. Naravane meets Nepal's Premier K.P. Sharma Oli. The Nepalese Prime Minister underlines deep bilateral ties, hopes for a peaceful resolution to border issues. And now the headlines coming from the U.S. presidential polls. Counting underway in many states, Democratic candidate Joe Biden inches closer to U.S. presidency, overtakes Donald Trump in Georgia and Pennsylvania. Biden also leads in Nevada from day one of counting. As Biden overtakes Trump in Pennsylvania, the state's Secretary of State says the overwhelming majority of ballots will be counted by Friday in the battleground state. As U.S. awaits announcement of the president, protests are heating up in the U.S. and Arizona. A brief scuffle takes place between Trump and Biden supporters. Restive encounters unfold in New York and Washington and swing state cities of Milwaukee in Wisconsin, Las Vegas in Nevada, Detroit in Michigan and Atlanta in Georgia. Donald Trump loses lawsuits in Michigan and Georgia courts but scores the first legal win in Pennsylvania, where appellate judge orders that poll watchers must be allowed within 6 feet of counting of votes. Trump team pressing legal challenges in several states. Our top focus, Prime Minister Narendra Modi held a virtual bilateral summit with his Italian counterpart Giuseppe Conte. 15 agreements were signed in various sectors, including economy and energy. In his address, PM Modi underlined the need to prepare for challenges and opportunities arising out of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi virtually addressed the India-Italy virtual bilateral summit. On this occasion, his counterpart, Italian Prime Minister, was also present. PM Modi expressed his condolences on behalf of people of India for the losses due to COVID-19 pandemic in Italy.
कोविड-19 महामारी सेकंड वर्ल्ड वॉर की तरह इतिहास में एक वाटरशेड रहेगी। हम सभी को इस नई दुनिया के लिए, पोस्ट कोरोना वर्ल्ड के लिए अपने आप को एडेप्ट करना होगा।
During the past 3 years, this has been the 5th interaction of Prime Minister with Italy. On this occasion, PM Modi said that India is committed to strengthen bilateral relations.
2018 में हमारी बातचीत के बाद आपसी आदान प्रदान में काफी गति आई है। मुझे ये जानकर खुशी है कि इटली की संसद ने पिछले साल इंडिया इटली फ्रेंडशिप ग्रुप स्थापित किया है। मैं आशा करता हूं कि कोविड-19 की स्थिति सुधरने के बाद हमें इटालियन पार्लियामेंट मेंबर्स का भारत में स्वागत करने का मौका मिलेगा।
15 agreements were signed between India and Italy that included promoting cooperation in energy, green energy, culture as well as media. Joint Secretary in the External Affairs Ministry said that talks are going on with regard to cooperation in the defense sector, but cooperation is rapidly expanding in the economic sector.
The discussion or the engagement today was on economic ties, and Italy is very keen to diversify its supply chain, to diversify its investment, outgoing investment, to have a more substantive economic partnership with India. Coinciding with the summit, 15 agreements were signed, most in the private sector, and you will see a lot of investment decisions have been taken and cooperation between private sector entities.
The increasing cooperation seen between both the countries will help in promoting the pace of development in many areas. Bureau Report, DD India.
Now let's give you a sense of what's happening with the US presidential polls. On, America is still waiting for the results of the US presidential election, as is the rest of the world. The fight between Republican President Donald Trump and his Democratic rival Joe Biden is so close that the media is holding back on making projections until the last votes are tallied. Meanwhile, protests continued for the second day in different parts of America. Donald Trump lost lawsuits in Michigan and Georgia courts and scored the first legal win in Pennsylvania, even as he appeared to be in no mood to concede the election and on a continuous collision course with Joe Biden, who seems to be closing in on the US presidency.
The election.
Protests are heating up in the US as counting drags on in cliffhanger US election. Backers of President Donald Trump, some carrying guns, ramped up demonstrations on Thursday night against what he has alleged to be a rigged election in battleground states where votes were still being counted. The demonstrations were largely peaceful, although Trump's supporters occasionally shouted with counter-protesters. Trump says the election is being stolen, but there has been no evidence of fraud. But in Arizona, one of the closely contested states in the too-close-to-call race, Trump and Biden supporters briefly scuffled outside the Maricopa County Elections Department in Phoenix. With the future of the presidency in the balance, restive encounters also unfolded in New York and Washington, as well as swing state cities such as Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Las Vegas, Nevada, Detroit, Michigan, and Atlanta, Georgia. Philadelphia police on Friday detained a man in an alleged plot to attack a vote-counting venue, a day after supporters of both US President Donald Trump and his Democratic challenger Joe Biden held rallies in Philadelphia as election staffers slowly counted thousands of mail-in ballots that could decide Pennsylvania's crucial 20 electoral college votes. Betraying no signs of conceding the election, US President Donald Trump said on Thursday that if legal votes are counted, he would win the presidential election. Even as Democrat, Joe Biden was optimistic about winning the US presidency and appealed for calm.
If you count the legal votes, I easily win. If you count the illegal votes, they can try to steal the election from us. If you count the votes that came in late, we're looking at them very strongly, but a lot of votes came in late. I've already decisively won many critical states, including massive victories in Florida, Iowa, Indiana, Ohio. To name just a few, we won these and many other victories despite historic election interference from big media, big money, and big tech.
We have no doubt that when the count is finished, Senator Harris and I will be declared the winners. So I ask everyone to stay calm, all the people to stay calm.
Even as Donald Trump questioned the counting of mail-in ballots arriving in states after 3rd November, Pennsylvania Secretary of State Kathy Boockvar said on Thursday that the overwhelming majority of ballots will be counted by Friday in the battleground state.
What I've said all along is that the overwhelming majority of ballots will be counted by Friday. I still think that we're ahead of schedule, and we actually already have counted the overwhelming majority of ballots, but because it's a close race, it's not quite clear yet who the winner is.
President Donald Trump's campaign lost court rulings in the closely contested states of Georgia and Michigan. In the Georgia case, the campaign alleged 53 late-arriving ballots were mixed with on-time ballots. In Michigan, it had sought to stop votes from being counted and obtain greater access to the tabulation process. State judges tossed out both the suits on Thursday. While the court in Georgia said there was no evidence that the ballots in question were invalid, the Michigan court said there was no basis to find that there is a substantial likelihood of success on the merits. But in Pennsylvania, Donald Trump wins the first legal battle wherein an appellate judge has ordered that poll watchers must be allowed within 6 feet of counting of votes. With the race to the White House still too close to call, even 3 days after the election, the world awaits the winner. Newsnight Desk, DD India.
So let's take a look now at the map of the United States of America and what it's showing in terms of leads for Democrats and the Republicans. There you can see Nevada and Arizona, where Democrats are leading. You can also see Georgia and Pennsylvania here, where Democrats are leading. And in North Carolina, there is a lead that Republicans have. Besides that, in Alaska as well, there is a lead that Donald Trump has, and that lead is quite substantial. Now let's take a look at the states that are in play in greater detail. We'll show you the kind of percentage of votes in terms of division of popular votes state after state. Alaska, in that state, there's a substantial lead that Donald Trump has of 62.9, whereas Biden has a lead, is trailing in fact at 33%. So there is a substantial lead that Trump enjoys there. Besides that, there is Arizona, where the lead of Joe Biden is there, but it's quite slender. Joe Biden has captured 50.1% of the popular votes, whereas Trump has over 48%. Here's Georgia, that had been with Republicans for quite some time. Here again, there is a slender lead that is there of Joe Biden at 49.4%. And here it'll seem like a tie to you, but there is a very slender lead in Georgia of around 900 odd votes or so that Joe Biden has over President Trump. In Nevada, which you're looking at the kind of lead that Biden has of 49.4%. So there is again a slender margin here between Trump and Joe Biden. Trump at 48.5% in Nevada. Nevada brings with it 6 electoral votes, and that is all that Biden needs to win this if you look at some news networks, whereas what we are reporting to you are One News Network's numbers, where you're looking at 253 electoral votes with Biden so far and 214 with Donald Trump. According to this, Biden needs around 17 electoral votes to win this election, because the halfway mark is 217. North Carolina, there you are looking at a slender lead that Donald Trump has. In Pennsylvania, which was supposed to be one state where this poll outcome was supposed to be hinged, and here there is a slender lead that Joe Biden has of 49.4%, whereas Trump is trailing at 49.3%. So this is how the various states in play look like, and it was a neck and neck at some point in time, but now it seems that Joe Biden is closing in on victory, because he's leading both in Georgia, which has been a stronghold of not just Donald Trump, but to Republicans, because the last time a Democrat president won this was in 1992, and that was Bill Clinton. Since then, Republicans have won in Georgia time and again. And Pennsylvania, of course, was a battleground state, not just in the traditional sense of it being a battleground state, but also because we saw last pitch efforts really by both sides to ensure that they win this crucial battleground state. So we'll take a break at this point in time, and after the break we'll discuss what one should expect really as far as the US presidential poll outcome is concerned. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching News Night. Our in focus tonight is Biden closes in on US presidency. To talk about that, we have with us two guests, G. Parthasarathy, former ambassador, and Sushant Sareen, strategic affairs analyst. I welcome you both to News Night. I'll come to you, Sushant. So Mr. Sareen, do you think that Joe Biden will finally make it, considering the slender margins that he now has in Georgia as well as Pennsylvania?
All he needs now is one state, and he's, he crosses the line and he wins. So I think he's clearly the odds-on winner. The problem, however, is going to be whether whatever is the result, how that will be taken, whether it will be accepted, not accepted, the legal challenges that are likely to be mounted. The legal challenges right now are on the vote count. But later on, I think those legal challenges will be even more onerous. Although my own sense is that regardless of whatever legal challenges, the Trump campaign mounts, I think the way this thing is going to unfold is that everybody is going to finally decide that, okay, fine, the votes have been counted. Incidentally, the votes are counted and the official results are actually declared after a couple of weeks. So by that time, whatever legal challenges have to happen will happen. But at the end of it, I think the guy who gets the most number of votes, which Mr. Biden seems to be getting, is likely to be declared the president, and Mr. Donald Trump will just have to lump it. That seems to be the way in which things seem to be moving. But look, let's face it, till yesterday morning, everybody thought that Mr. Trump has again pulled a surprise and is likely to again take this election away. Then by today morning and by today evening, it's become quite clear that he's on the losing side. So it's been a seesaw battle. And frankly, who knows that maybe another miracle of sorts takes place and Trump pulls ahead. But I think it's looking extremely bleak for him right now.
Ambassador Parthasarathy, protests have continued in different parts of America. In recent times, do you have any memory of such a polarized US presidential election? Also, have doubts been cast on the integrity of the poll process? Is that also something unique this time around?
Well, the first point is that now there is nothing which can stop Trump, because they are counting postal ballots, and the huge bulk of the postal ballots are with the Democrats, because that was a decision they took, given the nature of their electorate. So I think I have no doubt. Yes, I think Mr. Sushant Sareen has some points. It will be challenged. There has been one case in the past when that happened. That was in an election between George Bush, Republican, and Al Gore, his Democratic Party opponent, who was very popular. In the end, what happened was that it went up to the Supreme Court. because Bush had won uh, by a narrow margin of 12 or 14 votes at that point in time, a very small margin. The Supreme Court ruled in favor of Bush. They didn't overturn the decision. So I think, Mr. Trump was given to being impetuous, given to taking decisions which have no bearing in law. And I think he's going to meet his sort of judgment here on this, because I can't see the Supreme Court or anyone rule in his favor when this the counting has been so meticulous. I mean, the fact is that the Democrats were trailing for a long time and swept ahead because they'd also been advised, a large number of them, millions of them, to send postal ballots. I think around million or something, yeah.
And we haven't seen such a polarized election in a long, long time,
No,
isn't it? Look at the
absolutely.
division of popular
You know,
votes.
every election in America has been gentlemanly. I mean, the sort of language Mr. Trump has used is to put it mildly shocking. It's not a part of American democracy or democratic practices. I went through an election where sitting president Jimmy Carter lost to Ronald Reagan, and that was it. He graciously conceded and went back home.
In a long, long time, there hasn't been a presidential candidate who's refused to concede as well. Having said that, do you expect, Mr. Serene, this issue to reach the Supreme Court? It's already reached Michigan court as well as Georgia court, where Trump has lost. And in Pennsylvania, there is some relief that the Trump camp has got, but he's now expected to move more courts going forward. Do you expect this to finally reach the Supreme Court the way it did in 2000? And will the conservative bias that is there in terms of numbers, if you look at the Supreme Court justices, play a role in a final decision if it comes to that?
Well, I think that's what the Trump campaign would be banking upon, that because they, in a manner of speaking, have a 6-3 majority in the Supreme Court, if this matter does go to Supreme Court, as is likely, see, even if they lose whatever challenges they mount in the lower courts, they'll obviously appeal that. It's likely to go to the Supreme Court, and maybe they hope that they will get some relief from that. But, I'll go along with what Ambassador Parthasarathi is saying. I think the system is such that if, you do not accept whatever is the verdict which has come out, then, you actually shake up the system really badly. And that will be a somewhat unprecedented kind of a situation for American democracy. So I would imagine that the establishment or the deep state will actually say, okay, fine, let's call it out here and let this election be over. But let's come back to something which you were asking, Mr. Parthasarathi, and I just like to weigh in on that. About the polarized election, I think the problem is precisely that because it's such a polarized election, that it's becoming so contentious. After all, if Mr. Biden had actually got that blue wave which everybody was speaking about, there was a massive upsurge in his favor, then all these controversies would have been redundant. He would have already, the election would have already been called. Mr. Trump could keep cribbing about it, but it would have been fait accompli for him. The fact that it's going right down to the wire is why, which is also a sign of how polarized the U.S. The entire U.S. Politics has become. I think that's one problem. The second problem is that while there is no evidence which has been presented of voter fraud, the fact of the matter remains that there has been this controversy which has been doing the round for months now, where people have been saying that this postal or mail-in ballot system is liable to abuse, it's liable to voter fraud. Nobody has proven anything as yet, but the potential for misuse, the potential for fraud is fairly high because there are not enough checks and balances when it comes to voter fraud. So there is that apprehension which has already been there. Now, will the courts overturn an entire election on that basis? I would be extremely surprised if that was to happen. So regardless of a conservative majority in the Supreme Court, if Mr. Biden is announced as the winner, I think then it will be fait accompli. And whether or not Mr. Trump continues to linger on for another couple of weeks, I think ultimately he'll have to quit.
Master Parthasarthi, if Joe Biden is to finally win this election, then how do you think the control over the House of Representatives and Senate would matter here? Because leads show that the Democrats are leading in the House of Representatives, whereas the Republicans are leading in the Senate. That will be status quo. So without the Senate really being with the Democrats, do you think the road ahead will be difficult for Joe Biden, especially because he'll be looking at passage of fiscal stimulus, a big one at that, and its passage by the U.S. Congress?
I think no one would oppose a fiscal stimulus, given the state of the U.S. economy. They'll be lynched in their constituencies if they do. But yes, foreign policy, I think you do have elements in the Democratic Party which we're not quite happy with in the House of Representatives. And some of them, I regret to say, are Indians. Therefore, we'll have to do be a bit more careful in dealing in the House of Representatives with the Democrats. But Biden himself, let us not forget, when he was in the opposition and leader of the opposition, the most difficult legislation the Bush administration was for the nuclear deal with India. And Biden led the charge and led the support at that time. And he has said nice things about India since then. Right now, the US needs us too desperately because of rising tensions, which the whole of the Asia Pacific is having thanks to China's aggressive behavior. So I think, yes, there will be some balancing, but we may make one or two objections to what they say. But the larger relationship will remain strong. And I think a couple of things on trade. The sanctions which Trump placed on us were atrocious. They're a violation of the rules of the WTO. Those were concessions we were entitled to as a developing country. I think that will be one subject we would like them to move on with as soon as possible. Military cooperation will be very forthcoming. I personally believe that before Pompeo and the Defense Secretary came here, they would have had a word with the Democrats. And there is a national consensus in the US on this. So, quite happy. Let's see, most important is, can they get the American private sector to come across with us joining, international sort of market streams and international links or supply chains, which China, they may no longer want to have with China. Japan certainly would like to move towards India.
Yes. Mr. Serene, do you agree with that view that there is bipartisan support in the United States for India and the policy of continuity will continue across sectors, particularly as far as the Indo-Pacific region is concerned?
If all goes well, yes. But I think we need to be mindful that there is a certain leftist bent in the current Congress, or at least among the Democrats. I don't know how much influence they'll bring to bear on the current administration, if it is a Biden administration. So yes, to an extent, theoretically, the US needs us as much as we need the US. But for example, if the US was to take a position which it had during the Obama years, when they thought that there'll be a G2 that will control the world, and the G2 being US and China, or instead of confronting China, Mr. Biden and his administration decides that they need to engage China, accommodate China, and all of that kind of stuff which went on earlier before Mr. Trump came in. You have something like that happening, even though there might be resistance from the American establishment on that. But if that is the way they go, because please remember that in the US, the corporate America is still very keen on very, very close relations with China. And please also remember that it is that same corporate America which has actually been a big supporter of the Biden campaign. please also remember that many of the tech companies which have been actually censoring Trump and all of his things, it's another matter that they might have been utterly they might have been thrown out of China, but nevertheless, the way they suck up to China all the time, the Twitters and the Facebooks and what have you, I think that is something which could start influencing some amount of policy in the US. Now, I'm all for what Ambassador Parthasarathi is saying, to try and attract the supply chains to India. But I think on that, we also need to get our act together. Some very, very good policies have come out. For example, just a couple of days back, on IT services, that Inspector Raj has been completely done away with. But now that we've done it away with the Inspector Raj in the IT services, why can't we do it in other industrial activity so that we can attract that kind of industry, generate employment out here, bring this whole Make in India thing, make it a success. I think that is the direction we need to move on. Secondly, this won't be the first time that the US will have the president from one party and the Senate being controlled by the Republicans. But I would imagine that given the experience that Mr. Biden has, he will be able to, make some consensus, draw some consensus on many of the issues which are probably not as contentious. He wouldn't be somewhat like what Mr. Trump was, who was a bit like a battering ram. So I think to that extent, having a Senate controlled by another party, not such a big Biden administration. But yes, there could be certain other problems which could come India's way if the loony left of the Democratic Party was to really start influencing the policies of the administration.
Ambassador, will US under Joe Biden be more multilateralist, and should India be looking forward to that?
Yes, I think they will be more multilateralist. And look, we should be very careful about picking and choosing what we wish to do with the Americas. The Asia, the Quad is a good idea. We could expand it with bringing in other members, because ultimately you have to balance Chinese power. And under Xi Jinping's leadership, China has become totally averse to observing international law. They have grabbed the maritime space and territory from at least 12 countries. They have been, their actions have been set aside by the International Tribunal dealing with the law of the seas, and they have disobeyed that tribunal. They are in violation of international law with regard to all their maritime frontiers, including such countries close to us like Vietnam and Indonesia. So we need to bring these countries together in this effort to balance Chinese power. It is not sort of directed to confront China, but to balance their power, because they are using their power irresponsibly. Look at what they've done in Ladakh.
Absolutely. In fact, Joe Biden had a promise that he wants to build a coalition of democracies to take on China. And even if Trump is to retain power, the odds of which are not there very much, he too has been quite strident on China. So in Indo-Pacific, by and large, India should be rest assured. Well, thank you, Ambassador Parthasarathi and Mr. Sareen, for having joined us on Newsnight tonight. Well, let's move on now. As air quality deteriorates in Delhi NCR, the Commission for Air Quality Management, a National Capital Region and adjoining areas are set up to control air pollution in the region, has started functioning from Friday itself. The centre informed the Supreme Court about this development on Friday. The court told the centre that it should be ensured that there was no smog in Delhi. This comes after some states banned the bursting of firecrackers in the ongoing festive season in view of the COVID-19 pandemic and rising pollution levels.
As winter nears, the air pollution in Delhi and NCR is once again getting increasingly poisonous. The steps taken by the government seem to have little impact on improving the air quality. During a hearing in the Supreme Court on the deteriorating air quality, the Solicitor General Tushar Mehta said the commission was set up to control the pollution has started functioning from Friday itself. On this, the Apex Court in a stricter tone said that it should have ensured that there was no smog in Delhi. A bench headed by Chief Justice S.A. Bobde said that it was the responsibility of the government to overcome the problem of pollution. Meanwhile, the centre has appointed former Delhi Chief Secretary M.M. Kutty as the chairperson of the Commission for Air Quality Management in the National Capital Region and adjoining areas. Apart from it, other full-time members include Mukesh Khare of the Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi, and Ramesh KJ, ex-Director General of the Indian Meteorological Department, and A.K. Nautiyal, a Joint Secretary in the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Their tenure will be for 3 years or until they attain the age of 70 years. To tackle the worsening air quality, the government on October 29th had introduced a new law and had constituted the Commission for Air Quality Management in the National Capital Region and adjoining areas. The new law provides for jail up to 5 years and 1 crore rupees fine for violators.
उत्तर भारत में जो प्रदूषण होता है और खासकर दिल्ली और नज़दीक के शहरों का जो एयर शेड है, उस एयर शेड के प्रदूषण को मात देने के लिए आवश्यक उपाय और कार्रवाई ये आयोग करेगा.
The central government has taken several important steps to tackle the problem of stubble burning, which is a major factor in air pollution in Delhi and NCR. A central scheme was introduced in order to lay special emphasis towards promotion of agricultural mechanization in the country, for which a budget of 1,178 crore rupees was allocated. Under the scheme, 50% subsidy is provided to the individual farmers and 80% subsidy to farmer groups for agriculture machines and equipment for in-situ crop residue management. During 2018-2019, the state governments have supplied more than 56,290 machines to individual farmers in custom hiring centers to promote agricultural mechanization. Meanwhile, many states have banned the bursting of crackers during festivals in view of the COVID-19 pandemic and due to rising pollution level. Some states have banned the use of firecrackers completely, while some others have banned the use of imported firecrackers. Delhi government has announced a ban on the use of all firecrackers till November 30th due to persistently high pollution and smog levels.
सभी तरह के पटाखे बंद किए गए 7 तारीख से लेकर 30 तारीख तक. इस बार ये पोल्यूशन है और कोविड भी, दोनों चीजें चल रही हैं. तो ऐसा ना हो कि आपको सबको पता है कि जिस टाइम दिवाली के दिन पटाखे जलते हैं तो रात के 3, 4, 5 घंटे सांस भी नहीं लिया जाता है. इतना बुरी हालत हो जाती है.
Besides, Karnataka has also banned the bursting of firecrackers on the occasion of Diwali. Apart from this, Maharashtra has issued guidelines and appealed to the people to avoid bursting firecrackers, while Haryana and Madhya Pradesh have banned the sale and distribution of imported firecrackers. Bureau Report, Newsnight Desk, DD India.
Union Home Minister Amit Shah, on the second and final day of his visit to West Bengal, continues his outreach to marginalized communities in the state and hit out at the Mamata Banerjee government, accusing it of politics of appeasement. The former BJP president also set for BJP workers a target of 2/3 majority in the next year's assembly polls.
Home Minister's Day 2 visit in West Bengal was jam-packed with back-to-back engagements with party workers in the state as well as meeting other communities. Home Minister appealed to voters in the state to give one more chance to the Modi government for development. He claimed that BJP will form government in West Bengal with a thumping majority.
जिस प्रकार से अपीसमेंट की पॉलिटिक्स, तुष्टीकरण की पॉलिटिक्स चल रही है, इससे बंगाल की ये महान परंपरा आहत हुई है. मैं आज यहाँ से बंगाल की महान जनता को आह्वान करना चाहता हूं कि आध्यात्मिक और धार्मिक चेतना का केंद्र बंगाल जो पूरे देश का बना, पूरे देश का रहा, वो गौरव फिर से एक बार बंगाल प्राप्त करे. इसलिए आप सब एकमुश्त होकर, जागरूक होकर अपने अपने दायित्व का निर्वहन करिए.
Home Minister slammed the state government for creating hindrances for welfare of the people and for corruption, even during a time like the COVID-19 pandemic.
हमारा लक्ष्य स्पष्ट है. बंगाल के अंदर विकास हो, देश की सीमाएं सुरक्षित हो, बंगाल के अंदर घुसपैठ रुके. तृणमूल कांग्रेस का एकमात्र लक्ष्य है दीदी का एकमात्र लक्ष्य है कि अगली टर्म में भतीजे को मुख्यमंत्री बना देना। एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन का संपूर्ण राजनीतिकरण करा है, राजनीति का संपूर्ण अपराधीकरण करा है और भ्रष्टाचार को इंस्टीट्यूशनलाइज करने का काम ममता बनर्जी ने किया है।
In order to strengthen the socially backward community in West Bengal, Home Minister Amit Shah met people of different communities and held interactions. He also reached out to the marginalized Motua community in the state, visiting them and having lunch with them. Home Minister also met classical musician Ajay Chakraborty and visited his music institution Shruti Nandan. Amit Shah visited Dakshineshwar Kali Temple and offered prayers along with party's West Bengal in charge Kailash Vijayvargiya and State President Dilip Ghosh. Home Minister launched a scathing attack against the ruling Trinamool Congress over appeasement politics.
मैं कई बार दक्षिणेश्वर आया हूं, जब भी आया यहां से ऊर्जा और चेतना प्राप्त कर कर वापिस गया हूं। आज मां काली से समस्त बंगाल की और देश की जनता की मंगल कामना मैंने की है।
BJP has made major inroads into the state with increase in its vote share in the Lok Sabha elections, while the real battle remains intact with the TMC. With few months to go for the state assembly elections, Amit Shah's visit to West Bengal at this crucial time has boosted the morale of party workers in the state. Newsnight Desk, DD India.
The stage is set for the third and final phase of Bihar Assembly polls on Saturday. 78 seats will go to polls in this phase that will seal the fate of several ministers in the Bihar government that are in the poll fray. RJD's Abdul Bari Siddiqui and former Union Minister Sharad Yadav's daughter Subhashini Raj Rao are also in the fray this time.
Bihar is all set for the third and final phase of state assembly elections. 78 constituencies spread over 15 districts of Bihar will go to polls on Saturday. Elaborate polling arrangements have been made for the final phase.
कड़ाई से वहां पे वाहन चेकिंग की जा रही है। इसके अलावा 12 फ्लाइंग स्क्वाड और 12 SSTV हैं, जिनमें फोर्स डिप्लॉयमेंट हो चुका है और वो भी 24 आवर काम करेंगी चुनाव समाप्त होने तक।
Election Commission has issued guidelines to be followed during the polling. Thermal screening of all persons will be carried out and sanitizers will be made available at all locations during polling. Over 2.35 crore electorate will decide the fate of 1,204 candidates, including 110 women in this phase. Polling will be held from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Central Armed Police Forces have been deployed in all the booths. Additional security forces have been deployed in Naxal-infested areas to ensure free and fair polling.
सुरक्षा व्यवस्था के लिए हर मतदान केंद्र स्थल पर केंद्रीय बलों की प्रतिनियुक्ति की गई है। उसके साथ साथ बिहार पुलिस की प्रतिनियुक्ति भी है। होमगार्ड के जवानों की प्रतिनियुक्ति कोविड को देखते हुए लाइन लगाने के लिए भी किया गया है। सुरक्षा व्यवस्था पूरी तरह से चाक चौबंद है।
BJP is contesting on 34 seats, Janata Dal United on 37, while RJD is contesting 44 seats. Congress has fielded 25 candidates and left parties 9 seats. On the other hand, LJP has fielded 42 candidates and BSP 19 candidates for the final phase. Elections are being held in 3 phases for 243-member Bihar Legislative Assembly. The first was held on 28th October and second phase on 3rd of November. Counting of votes will take place on 10th of November. Bureau Report, DD India.
With the 8th round of senior military commander level talks between India and China kicking off at Chushul in an effort to resolve the ongoing standoff along the line of actual control, Chief of Defence Staff General Bipin Rawat has said that borders are completely safe and any kind of mischievous activities will not be tolerated.
India, known for its spirit of brotherhood through non-violence, deep-rooted in ahimsa, but whenever someone showed unprovoked tactical actions at the border areas and then the world has seen the fierce form of Indian soldiers, the enemies kneel down in the face of the army's indomitable courage and capability. Whether it is about foiling infiltration bid or giving a stern message to those who have indulged in ceasefire violation, India displayed the valor of its soldiers to the whole world with a clear message that any kind of interference at its borders will not be tolerated. Speaking at the Diamond Jubilee celebrations of National Defence College, Chief of Defence Staff General Bipin Rawat said that the situation at the line of actual control remains tense and for its misadventures, the Chinese PLA is facing unanticipated consequences due to the strong and firm response by the Indian Army.
The situation along the line of actual control in eastern Ladakh remains tense, and the PLA is facing unanticipated consequences of its misadventure in Ladakh because of the Indian Defence Forces' firm and strong response. Our posturing is unambiguous. We will not accept any shifting of the line of actual control. In the overall security calculus, the border confrontations, transgressions and unprovoked tactical military actions spiraling into a larger conflict cannot therefore be discontinued.
Defence Minister Rajnath Singh on Thursday said that India is a peace-loving country and that peace can only be ensured through the ability to deter war. He said that India is determined to protect its sovereignty and territorial integrity in the face of unilateralism and aggression, no matter what the sacrifice.
कोई यूनिलेटरल तरीके से एलएसी पर एक्शन करने की इजाजत हम किसी भी सूरत में नहीं दे सकते। मैं देश को आश्वस्त करना चाहता हूं। अब हमारी सरकार ने सेनाओं को वह खुली छूट दे रखी है कि एलएसी पर हम किसी भी तरह के बदलाव को अनदेखा नहीं करेंगे। गलवान में उस दिन भारतीय सेना ने यही किया और पूरी बहादुरी से पीएलए के सैनिकों का मुकाबला करते हुए उन्हें पीछे जाने पर मजबूर किया।
Meanwhile, the 8-corps commander-level talks between India and China kicked off once more at Chushul in eastern Ladakh to resolve border dispute and de-escalation of forces at the line of actual control. However, both the countries will soon arrive at a concrete solution. Meanwhile, giving a clear signal to Pakistan, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh has said that the entire Pakistan-occupied Kashmir belonged to India and until its merger with India, there is no scope of complete solution.
भारत की संसद में आप सभी जानते हैं पीओके को लेकर सर्वसम्मत प्रस्ताव पारित है कि वह भारत का हिस्सा है। हम उस प्रस्ताव को किसी भी सूरत में भूलेंगे नहीं। और जब तक पीओके का भारत के साथ एकीकरण नहीं होगा तब तक भारत पाकिस्तान के बीच सीमा विवाद का पूर्ण समाधान नहीं हो सकता।
From space to sea, technology to diplomacy, India is more vigilant than ever. Strong and adamant on its own terms. Today, India is not afraid of anybody, but speaks eye to eye. Bureau Report, DD India.
The Ministry of External Affairs has said that India and China commander-level talks are aimed at carrying forward negotiations on the disengagement process in eastern Ladakh.
As conveyed earlier, both our sides continue to maintain close communication at the military and diplomatic levels to achieve complete disengagement along the line of actual control. The two sides are guided by the leaders' consensus to jointly safeguard peace and tranquility in the border areas. We will continue to maintain the dialogue with the Chinese side to arrive at a mutually acceptable solution to the current situation along the LAC in eastern Ladakh.
MEA spokesperson Anurag Srivastava clarified that the announcement made by the Chinese embassy on barring entry into China is temporary action and changes can be expected in a timely manner. India further said that the action is to temporarily suspend existing visas only and future visa applications have not been banned. Visas issued after the 3rd of November are valid for travel to China. The measure is not India-specific and similar measures have been announced in respect of several other countries.
We have seen the announcement by the Chinese embassy and we understand that this is a temporary measure and changes can be expected in a timely manner. We also understand that the measure is not India specific and that similar measures have been announced for several other countries.
The Indian Army Chief General M.M. Naravane paid a courtesy call on K.P. Sharma Oli, Prime Minister of Nepal. He was accompanied by Ambassador Vinay M. Quatra and other delegation members. General Naravane conveyed the best wishes of Honorable Prime Minister of India Narendra Modi to Prime Minister Oli and the people of Nepal. General Naravane also expressed his personal gratitude for the warm hospitality extended by the government of Nepal. Both sides also exchanged views on the extensive bilateral partnership between India and Nepal. General Naravane reaffirmed that he would work to further strengthen the defence cooperation between the two countries. Now look at what else is making news across the country.
The 26-hour countdown for the launch of ISRO's first satellite of this year has begun at the agency's launch pad in Sriharikota. PSLV C-49 rocket is slated to lift off with an Earth observation satellite of FreeSat series, codenamed EOS-01, and 9 foreign commercial satellites from the first launch pad at 3:02 p.m. on Saturday, subject to weather conditions. It can also see through clouds. EOS-01 will be used for civil applications in agriculture, forestry, soil moisture, geology, coastal monitoring and flood monitoring. In a huge setback for Arnab Goswami, Editor-in-Chief of Republic TV, Bombay High Court adjourned the hearing on his interim bail plea till 12 noon on Saturday. Goswami has been remanded to 14-day judicial custody till November 18th in a 2018 abetment to suicide case. Supreme Court issued a show cause notice to Secretary of Maharashtra Legislative Assembly asking him to explain in 2 weeks as to why contempt proceedings should not be initiated against him for his letter to journalist Arnab Goswami, allegedly cautioning him against disclosing House notice to the Supreme Court. Taking to Twitter, Piyush Goyal said he met with MPs from Punjab regarding railway services in the state. Railways are keen to start services for the benefit of farmers, industry, MSMEs, general public and passenger convenience. Delhi police have received prosecution sanction from Union Home Ministry and Kejriwal government against Umar Khalid, a former JNU student leader, in connection with a case related to February communal violence in northeast Delhi. Khalid was arrested on September 13th under UAPA Act in a case related to communal violence in northeast Delhi. 5-member SIT probing the murder of Nikita Tomar submitted a 700-page charge sheet in a local court on Faridabad. The charge sheet contains digital, forensic and material evidence besides statement of 60 witnesses. Union Minister Gajendra Singh Shekhawat visited Dibang Ghati in Arunachal Pradesh. He inaugurated integrated project for water supply of rural areas. Earlier, he visited a museum and inaugurated a newly constructed building. State Election Commission has announced election to local bodies in Kerala to be held in 3 phases in December. The first phase of elections will be held on December 8th, second phase on December 10th, and the third phase on December 14th.
Union Health Minister Dr. Harshvardhan reviewed the coronavirus situation in Chhattisgarh. The review meeting was attended by Chhattisgarh's Health Minister as well as district magistrates of several districts of the state. On the occasion, Union Health Minister said that there are 7 districts of Chhattisgarh which have high COVID-19 cases. He stressed on the need to be more cautious in the festive as well as winter season. Health Minister said that vaccine will be available by the beginning of next year, and to begin with, health workers will be given this vaccine. The union government has suggested to the Chhattisgarh government to increase the number of tests, and that if people come to hospitals, then there will be a decline in the fatality rate.
आपके यहाँ रिकवरी रेट अभी 87.1% है. मे बी जो मेरे पास डाटा डैशबोर्ड वगैरह से उपलब्ध हुआ, हमारा देश का अभी रिकवरी रेट आज 92.36% के करीब एवरेज है. लेकिन आपके जो फैटेलिटी रेट है वो अच्छी बात है कि देश के फैटेलिटी रेट से कम है. देश का अगर आज 1.48 है तो आपका 1.19 के करीब इस समय फैटेलिटी रेट है. पॉजिटिविटी रेट ज़रूर आपका जो 10.31% के करीब है हमारे डाटा के हिसाब से.
Now news related to novel coronavirus in this COVID-19 wrap.
India continues to do well in the fight against COVID-19. New recoveries have exceeded the new cases continuously for the past 5 weeks. 54,157 COVID patients have recovered and have been discharged in the last 24 hours, whereas the new confirmed cases presently are pegged at 47,638. The active cases stand at 5,20,773. The national recovery rate has further improved to 92.32%. The testing rate has been ramped up significantly in the country. A cumulative total of 11,54,29,095 samples have been tested up to November 5th, with 12,20,711 samples being tested on Thursday. Pollution and coronavirus pandemic seem to have spelled double trouble for Delhiites. Delhi has reported nearly 7,000 COVID-19 cases for the second consecutive day. Delhi Health Minister Satinder Jain has said that the Delhi government has decided to augment the availability of beds for COVID patients in Delhi government hospitals in addition to the already existing one. While during winter, the Delhi government is going to set up 250 additional temporary shelters. Maharashtra School Education Minister Varsha Gaikwad said on Friday that schools for the students of class 9th to 12th may reopen from November 23rd after Diwali. Varsha Gaikwad also said that they have also proposed that the exam for class 10th and class 12th should be conducted in May.
Well, Britain has launched a COVID-19 mass testing pilot scheme in the northwest city of Liverpool, offering everyone tests irrespective of whether they have symptoms or not. As Britain has entered the second countrywide lockdown to tackle the rising number of COVID-19 cases, Prime Minister Boris Johnson said there was light at the end of the tunnel on COVID-19. He also expressed hope that Britain could return to some form of normality before Christmas. The United Kingdom has the biggest official death toll in Europe from COVID-19 and is grappling with more than 11,23,000 cases of infections. And the news coming in from the US, Georgia will see recounting of votes. Georgia Secretary of State said on Friday morning that there will be recounting for the presidential election in the state. He told reporters that recounting will take place due to narrow margin of votes. Biden's lead in Georgia was within the vote margin that would allow a candidate to request a recount under state law. That's it there in this edition of Newsnight. But do remember to wear your mask whenever you move out of your homes and be part of Doordarshan's Mask Up India campaign. Stay tuned, stay healthy, stay fit. Namaskar. Thanks for watching.